Lexie Hull didn't just show up to Game 3 of the WNBA playoffs. She declared war. And now, she's been suspended. Why? Because she said what everyone else was already thinking. The refs were rigging the game. Yep, you heard that right. One of the most gutsy, hard-fought playoff performances of the season just got overshadowed by a brutal suspension. And all because Hull had the audacity to call out the obvious.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The officiating in Game 3 between the Indiana Fever and the Las Vegas Aces wasn't just questionable. It was a full-blown circus. Missed calls, phantom fouls, and an avalanche of free throws handed to Vegas like coupons at a clearance sale. Lexie Hull, she played through injury, dropped a double-double, and literally put her body on the line for the Fever. But instead of headlines praising her resilience, she's now the villain for daring to suggest the league's darlings might be getting a little extra help from the whistle. Make it make sense. Let's be real here. The Aces have been coasting on favoritism for way too long. And it finally snapped. Hull went full truth-teller mode in the post-game presser, hinting, no, outright saying, what everyone in Gamebridge Fieldhouse could see with their own eyes. The calls weren't just bad, they were biased. And surprise, surprise, now she's the one getting punished? It's give and protect the brand, not protect the game. Meanwhile, A'ja Wilson had one of the worst shooting nights of her career. She was clamped up tighter than your high school jeans after Thanksgiving. Indiana's defense had her in a chokehold, and the only thing keeping Vegas afloat was, well, the free throw line. But instead of crediting Indiana's gritty defense or Hull's absolute masterclass in hustle, the media pulled the classic spin. Tough night for A'ja, as if she just tripped over her own shoelaces and the refs had nothing to do with it. And let's not even get started on Becky Hammon's press conference, where she basically sent a wink-wink to the refs, implying they weren't even favoring Vegas enough. You can't make this stuff up. So here we are, Lexie Hull suspended, Indiana furious, and Game 4 suddenly feels less like a playoff matchup and more like a statement. Because this isn't just about winning anymore. It's about exposing something deeper. The power dynamics, the media bias, the leagues within the league stuff that fans see, but rarely get acknowledged. And with 17,000 fans packing Gamebridge Fieldhouse for Game 4, it's about to get loud. Hull might be forced to sit out, but the message she sent is already echoing. Indiana's not backing down. Not from Vegas. Not from the league. Not from anybody. Because if they can't get a fair whistle, they'll just blow the whole thing up. Stay tuned. This one's not over. Not by a long shot. Lexie Hull didn't just play through pain. She played through chaos. Fought through injury, relentless pressure, and officiating that felt rigged from tip-off to final buzzer. Game 3 of the Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces series was more than just another playoff battle. It was a statement, a flashpoint, and the moment the WNBA's credibility came crashing into question. Hull was never supposed to be the headline. Not over A'ja Wilson, not over Kelsey Plum, and definitely not over Caitlin Clark. But after Game 3, she became the center of the storm for all the right reasons. And then the league suspended her. Not for flagrant fouls. Not for fighting. Not for breaking protocol. No, Lexie Hull got suspended for telling the truth. For calling out what everyone saw but no one wanted to say. The refs rigged Game 3 in favor of the Aces. It started with subtle whistles. 1 or 2 questionable calls. A missed travel here. A phantom foul there. But as the game wore on, the officiating turned from inconsistent to egregious. Vegas lived at the free throw line. Indiana? They had to earn every single point under the basket while fighting off both defenders and refs. By the fourth quarter, it wasn't even subtle. Vegas got every borderline call. Indiana got hacked, no whistle. Clark got bodied at the perimeter, nothing. Lexie took elbows in the paint. Play on. Meanwhile, the slightest contact on the other end sent Wilson straight to the line. Vegas finished with a wildly disproportionate number of free throws. The Fever, despite playing hard, physical defense, were treated like background noise. And then Lexie snapped. Not in the game. Not on the court. But after, when she finally spoke up, she didn't call names. She didn't scream. But she said it. The refs weren't calling a fair game. And for that, the league suspended her. That's the real story. A player gives her absolute all, 16 points, 10 rebounds, on a questionable injury designation, and gets silenced by the very institution she's giving her body to. She shows leadership, resilience, and accountability in the middle of a clearly biased playoff setting, and the league responds by shutting her down. It wasn't just disrespectful. It was transparent. The WNBA is trying to control the narrative, a narrative that protects its big-market darlings, shields its stars from criticism, and punishes the players who dare to speak out. Let's talk about Lexie's performance, because that effort, that was grit. She wasn't even supposed to play. She was banged up, hurting, and listed as questionable. But when the team needed a spark, Hull didn't hesitate. She played through it, dropped a double-double, played both ends, and did while taking more hits than any ref would acknowledge. Meanwhile, on the Vegas side, Aya Wilson had a rough night. Statistically and visually, she shot 6-4, 20 from the field. Couldn't get separation. Couldn't get rhythm. Indiana's defense locked in, forced tough shots, collapsed when needed, and rotated without panic. It wasn't dirty. It wasn't cheap. It was elite. But the officiating refused to let that defense shine. Every time Wilson missed, the refs tried to cover the gap with a whistle. A bailout call here. A late whistle there. It felt like they were officiating with an agenda, keeping Vegas alive, no matter what. Even Vegas's coach, Becky Hammond, couldn't help but get involved in the narrative manipulation. Her post-game comments hinted at her frustrations with the officiating, despite her team benefiting from it. A classic tactic. Build a narrative around pressure and unfair treatment, so that the next game continues the favorable whistle pattern. And that's where Game 4 becomes everything. Because now, Indiana has a target on its back, and not just from Vegas, from the league itself. But this time, they've got 17,000 fans at their back. Gainbridge Fieldhouse is no joke. That place rocks. And if you think Indiana fans didn't see what went down in Game 3, think again. They're mad, they're loud, and they're ready. This isn't just about tying the series. This is about pushing back. Because right now, the Fever aren't just fighting Vegas. They're fighting optics, officiating, narrative. They're fighting a league that seems a little too invested in one team's success. And that's why Lexie Hull's suspension matters so much. She's not just being punished for a post-game comment. She's being punished for breaking the fourth wall, for exposing the uncomfortable truth that playoff games, games with real stakes, are being influenced not just by talent, but by bias, by a whistle, by selective enforcement. Let's be real. Vegas isn't some struggling underdog trying to make a name for themselves. They're the reigning champs, the powerhouse, the media favorite. They have the visibility, the clout, the image, and when they struggle, the league feels it. When Indiana fights back, it's a threat to that balance. That's why Lexie's performance in Game 3 was so dangerous. It proved that Vegas can be stopped, that all their flashy lineups, all their spacing, all their pace can be slowed, shut down, and exposed. Aya Wilson didn't have a bad night because she wasn't feeling it. She had a bad night because Indiana put her in a box. Their defense was physical, smart, relentless. They closed lanes, trapped her dribble, rotated off weak shooters, and made every look uncomfortable. And the refs couldn't stand it. So what happened? They tried to tip the scale, keep the story on track, protect the script. But Hull wasn't reading from that script. She was writing her own, and the league didn't like the ending. That's why this Game 4 is a battle not just for wins, but for legitimacy. Can Indiana rise in the face of blatant bias? Can they shake off the league's silencing tactics and take control of their own narrative? They've already shown they have the toughness, the heart, the personnel. They've just been waiting for platform. And with a home crowd like Gainbridge behind them, they're not just ready to play. They're ready to make a statement. The refs can't drown out that noise. The league can't mute that energy. This is Indiana's moment, not just to force a Game 5, but to take back control, to remind everyone that this isn't just entertainment. This is competition, and competition demands fairness. So what are we left with? A suspended Lexie Hull, a fired-up Indiana team, a frustrated fan base, and a league whose integrity is hanging by a thread. Game 4 is no longer just a must-win. It's a referendum on officiating, on narrative control, on fairness in professional sports. This wasn't about professionalism or some vague conduct detrimental to the league clause. This was about control, about narrative, about shutting down the player who dared to pull the curtain back on what felt like a rigged script. Lexie Hull called it out, and for that, the WNBA punished her. Now the league looks less like a professional institution and more like a corporation trying to protect its most valuable assets, whether they're actually performing or not. And let's not pretend the timing of this suspension is some random coincidence. It came right after a game where the referees handed Vegas every advantage they needed and where Lexie was arguably the most important player on the court for Indiana, not just statistically, but emotionally. Her 16-point, 10-rebound double-double wasn't just impressive, it was gritty. She had no business even being on the floor with that injury designation. And yet there she was, diving for loose balls, grabbing rebounds in traffic, defending like the season was on the line, because it was. And while the Vegas stars were fading under pressure, Lexie was shining through adversity. That's why her post-game honesty hit so hard. She didn't scream into a mic. She didn't start a conspiracy theory. She simply pointed out what everyone saw with their own eyes. The officiating was one-sided. The calls were lopsided. And the game, which should have been decided by players, was instead controlled by referees. You'd think in a professional league, that kind of criticism would lead to accountability. Instead, it led to suspension. And just like that, the WNBA made it clear, protect the image, not the integrity. Let's talk numbers, because they don't lie. Vegas was awarded significantly more free throws than Indiana, despite playing less aggressive basketball. Every time Indiana tried to close the gap, a whistle stopped them. And the calls? They weren't just questionable. They were momentum killers. Missed shooting fouls. No calls on push-offs. Phantom fouls that gave Vegas extra possessions. Technical fouls for barely contesting. It was an officiating masterclass in how to protect a favorite team without making it too obvious, until it got too obvious. By the third quarter, fans were booing every whistle. The broadcast commentators, usually as neutral as they come, were audibly baffled. And on social media, WNBA fans, both neutral and Indiana diehards, were posting clips side by side. Missed foul here, over the back there, all going one direction. But it wasn't just about free throws. It was about tone. Vegas played like they knew they were protected. They took riskier drives, forced shots through contact, and walked into the paint like it was theirs by right. Meanwhile, Indiana had to hesitate. They second-guessed every closeout. They pulled up early instead of driving, because every time they got physical, they got burned. That's the kind of officiating that doesn't just affect a scoreboard. It affects a mindset. It breaks rhythm. It kills confidence. It favors a team that doesn't have to play scared. And Lexie Hull, she didn't play scared. She played through it. And then she said what everyone else was too afraid to, that the refs were not calling a fair game. And now she's sitting out game 4 for it. You want to talk about injustice? That's it. She got penalized for telling the truth in a league that claims to stand for transparency and accountability. But let's be real, this isn't about one game. This is about how power works in professional sports. Because when you're the league's favorite child, you get protected. When you're the underdog who dares to speak out, you get silenced. Vegas is a flagship franchise. They have the star power, the big-name coach, the media coverage, the brand deals, the championship pedigree. And now the calls. Indiana? They're the disruptors. The ones refusing to go down quietly. The ones with a crowd so loud it shakes the hardwood. The ones who, despite being doubted, have made the series personal. And now, they have to play game 4 without one of their hardest working, toughest, most emotionally important players. Because she told the truth. Let that sink in. So now what? Game 4 becomes a reckoning. The crowd at Gamebridge Fieldhouse knows what's at stake. This isn't just about advancing in the playoffs anymore. It's about proving that you can't whistle away heart, that you can't eject toughness, that you can't suspend belief. Lexie Hull may not be on the floor, But her presence is going to be everywhere. The fans will be chanting her name. The players will be carrying her grit. In Vegas, they're walking into a hostile environment with a target painted on their backs. Not because of who they are, but because of how they've been protected. That's pressure no referee can call off. That's noise no suspension can silence. And if Indiana wins Game 4, the narrative will change. Because now we're watching more than just a playoff series. We're watching a team fight against a system. A team that's been undermined, disrespected, and yet still refuses to fold. They're playing for Lexie now. For themselves. For the game. And for every underdog who's ever been told to just keep quiet and play. You can't rig heart. You can't silence fire. And you definitely can't control a crowd that knows the truth. The question isn't whether Indiana can win. It's whether the league can stop them without being exposed again. Because the more they try to protect the narrative, the more obvious the cracks become. And the fans? They're not blind. Not anymore. Lexie Hull getting suspended didn't quiet the conversation. It amplified it. Now everyone's watching. Every call, every whistle, every moment. The spotlight is on. And there's nowhere for the league to hide. So now it's Game 4. No Lexie. No margin for error. And no more excuses. Just the fever. The fans. The fight. Lexie Hull isn't just suspended. She's become the symbol of everything the WNBA claims it's not. A hard-working, resilient player, silenced for speaking truth. Punished not for what she did on the court, but for what she dared to say after it. Her crime? Exposing the favoritism everyone else was trying to politely ignore. And the timing couldn't be more obvious. Lexie's suspension didn't happen midseason. It didn't happen in a meaningless game. It happened right before Game 4 of a critical playoff series, one where her team, Indiana, is facing elimination, playing on their home court, with every ounce of momentum earned, not given. And now, they're being forced to do it without one of their most fearless defenders and toughest voices. The message from the league couldn't be clearer. Fall in line or fall out. But here's the thing the league didn't anticipate. This might have backfired. Because when fans heard the news, they didn't turn on Lexie. They turned on the league. Twitter, Reddit, comment sections everywhere lit up with people demanding answers. Demanding consistency. Demanding the kind of transparency the WNBA says it values, but never actually shows when controversy hits its favorites. Fans aren't dumb. They saw what happened in Game 3. They saw the missed calls, the phantom fouls, the Vegas free throw parade, and they saw Lexie, beat up and bruised, dragging herself up and down the court to keep her team alive, while refs blew their whistles like they were paid by the minute. Now she's out? Suspended? For calling that out? You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to feel like something is off. Because let's be honest, if the league was really about fairness, why haven't we seen suspensions for players who throw elbows, scream at refs mid-game, or pull text with no remorse? Why is a post-game comment a calm, measured statement about inconsistent officiating? The thing that gets a player sidelined, it's not about behavior. It's about control. Lexie broke the script. She reminded everyone watching that these games don't exist in a vacuum, that whistles change games, that certain players, certain franchises get more rope than others, that sometimes the biggest plays in a playoff game aren't made by athletes, they're made by officials. And that truth? It's dangerous. Because now, all eyes are on Game 4. And not just to see who wins. People are watching the refs. Watching the calls. Watching how many fouls Clark draws. How many non-calls Vegas gets away with. How many 50-50 decisions suddenly start leaning one way. The league thought suspending Lexie would quiet the noise. It's only amplified it. Gamebridge Fieldhouse isn't going to be a normal home game. It's going to be a message. 17,000 fans who feel like their team was robbed. 17,000 people who watch the player give everything, then get tossed aside for telling the truth. You can't rig that kind of energy. Indiana has the underdog momentum now. And let's be real, they've been here all season. Doubted, disrespected, playing second fiddle to bigger narratives. To Vegas, to the media darlings, to the league's chosen ones. And yet they keep showing up, keep fighting, keep exposing cracks in the system. Clark gets the headlines, but Hull was the soul in Game 3. And taking her off the court doesn't take her out of the fight. If anything, it's only made Indiana more dangerous, more locked in, because now it's not just about basketball. It's about defiance. Every shot made, every stop, every charge taken will feel like a protest. Every rebound will feel like payback. The crowd will roar not just for points, but for justice. And Vegas? They've got pressure they've never felt before. They're not walking into just another away game. They're walking into a storm of boos, signs, chants, and receipts. And they're walking into it while carrying the narrative that they needed help to beat Indiana in Game 3. That sticks. No matter what the final score is, that sticks. And let's not forget, Aya Wilson struggled in Game 3. Badly. 6 for 20. Couldn't get comfortable. Got swallowed by Indiana's defense. The MVP buzz around her? Quiet. And the refs? They were the only thing keeping her in the game. That's not sustainable. Not when the crowd's against you. Not when the defense knows they can break you. Not when the officiating is now under a microscope. Vegas has to prove in Game 4 that they can win without the help. That they can close out a scrappy, angry Indiana team that just got slapped in the face by its own league. And if they can't, if Indiana pushes this to Game 5, with Lexie returning and the national spotlight fully exposed on the officiating bias, that's not just a game. That's a reckoning. Because the league doesn't just need Vegas to win. It needs Vegas to win cleanly. Anything less, and the legitimacy of this playoff run is permanently tainted. That's what's on the line now. Not just the series, but the credibility of the WNBA's postseason. And whether fans, players, and teams can trust that what happens between the lines actually matters, more than the storyline, more than the media push, more than the market size. So when Game 4 tips off, it won't just be Indiana versus Vegas. It'll be Indiana versus everything. The refs, the narratives, the expectations, the punishment handed down to a player who told the truth and got benched for it. And if they win, if they pull this off, they don't just tie the series. They blow up the script. So what do you think? Did the league go too far with Lexie Hull's suspension? Are we watching the WNBA protect its favorites? Or just fumble under pressure? And if Indiana wins Game 4, do they take the momentum all the way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. Loudly. Make sure you subscribe. We're breaking down every play, every power move, and every behind-the-scenes twist the league doesn't want to acknowledge. Because in the world of professional sports, it's not just about who scores. It's about who gets heard. And Lexie Hull, she got silenced. But the message is louder than ever.